How much more of a problem is that now in Afghanistan today than it was when you started?
It's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. We were really like on the come up in Afghanistan. Like things were really turning the corner. And I don't think anybody thought how bad it could get that fast. And it really has turned the corner. The country's really fallen apart. It's been
Just with the pullout.
It's been a super struggle, but I will tell you that like our factory is still kicking ass. Like it's been a struggle, but those guys are still working. We're still making chamas. We're still making cashmere. We're still doing everything we can to put products together because we think that that's the best way to represent America. As we're going to go on with business, we're going to do it ethically. Nobody can tell us anything because I've taken $0.0 from the U.S. government. It's all been funded because of our customers and people like you to make all this good shit happen.
Proper.
That's awesome.
Patriotism and then proper capitalism.
Yeah.
The best
Hey, we're
parts.
not- yeah,
the best parts of
exactly.
capitalism.
It's like we get a benefit, and through the individuals, either that's the customer base or there's the people that want to make a difference. They're the ones putting their money in it, and then you're actually making that possible, and then sticking by it. You're not like, quick payout. You're like, nope, we're going to do this for the long run. We want to see people succeed, which is why I surround myself with all y'all, is because it's one of the few times I'm like, oh, they actually care about others first and foremost. It's not their own selfish interests. It's like, how do we benefit the people that support us and make this possible?
Yeah.
It's fucking dope.
Well, thank you. We try. We like, and
It's killing it. Like we're
the
just
worst part is the goddamn internet, man. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're just making in China." Fuck you. Oh no,
That's got to hurt.
no, yeah. Oh, it's Chinese knockoffs. Like, stop. Like, oh, yeah, and like the racist stuff that people like throw at us. Just like, oh, you're making Afghanistan, and like racial slur. It's like, come on, man. Like, really?
like we're just.
You're not even saying it to be funny.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
That's the worst kind. We're
Damn
actually
it.
helping people. You putting like a little kiddo. It's like, and that's a lot of people don't understand. They have the reference of America poverty, and you're like, no. That is the poverty in America is completely different mindset than you are in a village. You do not have internet access, and you're trying to educate people. That unless you go to a third world or war-ridden country, you will never know that difference.
Yeah, then when anybody says the word poverty to me, I know right where I'm sitting. I'm in the back of a gun truck, and I'm driving my first time south out of Bagram through Kabul. And you drive down these roads, and there are these women, and they're sitting with like 6-month-old babies in their arms, and they're in the middle of the road, and they're holding their hands up like this, begging for food or for water or for anything because their husbands have got killed in the war or whatever, and they have no employable skills and they need something. And you think to yourself, that woman probably hopes somebody's checking their cell phone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like imagine, like, well, it's just the contextualization of $20 US per day.
Yeah.
What that means to you.
Oh,
$600
a year is the sustainable, like what you can do for a person. 600 per year.
I mean, it's crazy. It's the difference between here, we're just like, oh my God, slave wages, that shouldn't even be legal. But there, that's quite a lot.
Probably a week of that are slave laborers. People are like, they balling. They're living a different lifestyle.
That's less than 3 hours minimum wage here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're balling.
And that's what it's like going into houses, dirt floor. Dude, I remember going like out in those country houses or little villages, and you get to see that lifestyle where it is like dirt floors. They're still cooking you naan. They bring you tea. And they're so happy for what they have. And you're like, this is fucking dope. You're super respectful. They make some of the best tea still to this day.
Best weed. So good.
Everything. Just top tier.
Everything is good.
That's what he said, everything.
You're an individual that, for reference, like going into combat, you've done the combat thing. You got out of war from Afghanistan. And then you went back for your company to just go find shoes at the time.
A little bit more complicated than that, which we'll get into it. But yeah, like I like living adventurously. I like traveling to far off and distant places and meeting new people.
Shooting them.
Yeah, like
And shooting them.
it gets old, you know. You know, or you can just like go to dinner and have a beer with them. What are the other ways?
Yeah.
So
That's the right thing to do.
that is the right thing to do.
Dinner and then shoot them. No.
Remind me never to go to dinner with you guys.
No, it's awesome hearing your entire experience, and then starting it off. So you are the owner of Combat Flip Flops. You started that at venture in 2016, 2017?
2009.
Jeez, oh my God.
Which is when it first started, yeah. Yeah, that was so I got out in 2006. I did the standard thing that most veterans do. You get out and you get a regular job and try to be a human being, fail miserably, lose your job, fall back into like contracting because you need to make money to support your family, and they send you back overseas. It's basically my story. And
It's such a true. Man, I need money.
I need money.
I'm really good at this one thing.
Yeah. Send me back. And I ended up being over there, and in my job, I was responsible for putting in clinics and contracting doctors to agencies, different other government agencies who needed people to provide medical care and equipment. So when I showed up, I had a smile and a backpack and some cash, and I had to be alive when I got back on the plane, right? So what do you do? And I'm a map guy because I was an artillery guy in the regiment, and every night they have this briefing of where all the bombs were off on the previous day. Like, all right, here's where all the attacks went off. And then they overlay it. Here's it over a month. Here's what it's like over 3 months. And you see nodes. And the nodes are around the U.S. Embassy, military compounds and convoys, and reporters. Those are where the 3 in combat zones, that's where all the shit happens, around those areas. Well, if you're smart, like, I'm just not going to go to those places. And where you go is where there's a local small business flourishing, because the local small business owners don't let it happen on their corner. So you just stay there. And there was one time I was getting ready to like walk out of my hotel in the morning, and the concierge says, "Hey, Mr. Griffin, you need to go upstairs and have another cup of coffee." And I'm like, noted.
Heard.
Got it. And so I went upstairs, rooftop place. And this is where all the Russian stewardesses and like pilots would stay in this little hotel, kind of on the outskirts of Kabul. I'm upstairs having a drink of coffee, just kind of rescheduling a few meetings for the morning. All of a sudden, IED goes off. Coffee shakes, rumbles. Take the last sip of it. Walk back downstairs. Am I good to go now? He's like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Griffin, you're good to go. Have a great day."
Holy shit.
It just goes to show, like, the local business owners, they know when shit goes down versus our intelligence agencies and our military. So my thought is like, why aren't we encouraging more business? For the cost of one MRAP, we could turn around entire square blocks of cities.
But that's why the CIA started opening coffee shops.
I wish they would. I wish they would. That would be the more ethical thing for them to do. So, but that's how I got started. Is I was looking for a cup of coffee. So I was at a conference for the Afghan National Army. I'm a weird looking guy, and I'm a dirty secret. I'm an officer, right? So,
Boo, everyone boo.
Yeah. And I was at this conference, and it's all the old sergeant majors and the good old boys, and they're selling stuff to the Afghan National Army. And I had long hair and a beard, and nobody's talking to me. And I look across the conference way, and there's somebody like you, long hair and a beard.
Brown.
Nobody's talking to him. And I'm like, "Hey man, weird knows weird. Like, what's up?" And he was a Marine captain. His name is John Boyer, and he got hired to run a Afghan combat boot factory. Because a lot of people don't know this, but the U.S. government, the U.S. taxpayer, paid for a 340,000 person police force and military force in Afghanistan, from 1,700 to 340,000 in a couple years. So using the same mentality that we use in America, where you want to create jobs and stability, so they need to make the boots in country, they need backpacks, but they don't have those factories. So they had a program called Afghan First, Afghan Made. The U.S. government's like, "Hey, Afghan business owners, if you build a factory, we're going to give these contracts."
Just heavy instant, like,
That's fucking hilarious that the American government is putting forward Afghanistan first policies because they know they work in countries. That's crazy.
Isn't that right?
Wild.
That's just that's
Isn't that weird to
interesting.
think
I
about,
think.
right?
Yeah.
Why?
So they built these huge factories, like on the private business owners paid to build these factories on the bets that they were going to get government contracts to build product. And then they were taking people who didn't know how to do anything and training them to be cobblers and tailors to make boots and uniforms for the Afghan national military. Each one of those people supported 5 to 13 family members. So the social impact of a factory was just massive. And I met John. He's like, dude, I built this factory and I bought the most badass espresso machine in Afghanistan. Because when you're there in country, it's Nescafe or it's tea, and you're ready to shoot a motherfucker for a good cup of coffee, like after a week. And I'm like, dude, I'll be there tomorrow morning. And I walked into that factory and it changed my life. Yeah, I saw all of these people working, and they were like they took me on the tour, and the guys learning to like feed a sewing machine to sewing a straight line. And by the time you get to the end of it, there's hundreds of guys in a room knocking out badass combat boots that could withstand the rigors of Afghanistan, which our boot manufacturers couldn't do for years. And it was really impressive. And I asked him, I was like, hey man, what are you going to do when the war ends? And he's like, nothing. We're not going to do anything. Everybody here is going to go out of work. Nobody's going to want to buy anything in Afghanistan. And I went from like inspiration to fury, like pretty quickly. And I looked down on this table, and there's this combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. I was like, it's ugly and cool. Americans will buy that shit.
If I put combat on there,
they'll buy it. And the longer story of it is that we built this huge multi-100,000 person military out of, I think the number was like 60+% of them were illiterate. And they also grew up in a culture without shoelaces. So now you're taking these kids, you're training them to be a soldier, and you're making them wear these combat boots, but they're also Islamic. So they have to take their shoes on and off 5 times a day. So if you can imagine taking your combat boots on and off 5 times a day, it's kind of a pain in the dick. And then if you don't know how to tie shoelaces, it kind of complicates things.
And you can't read the instructions to do it.
Yeah. So they were losing tens of thousands of man hours per day because of fucking shoelaces. Think about that. And so he's like, hey, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to make a garrison style combat flip-flop. And like, you guys can wear, you go in the field, wear boots, but hey, just wear these around garrison. Never took off, but except for us. And then we just started, and that was it.